Intel microprocessor, Qualcomm Snapdragon, few chips, high volume, and they help you offset the cost. So I don't know what it costs Intel to design their processor, but it's multi-billion dollars, right? The only way they can offset that cost is because they sell a lot of them. Qualcomm chips cost a lot, but they ship maybe 1 billion units. So, you know, if you are thinking of designing a chip that's that complex, you got to be in a market where there's hundreds of millions of units, maybe billions of units, okay? If you're using an older technology and you can get away with 10 million units, you got to look at that trade-off. It's all about the business. It's not about technology, right? So, well, from us as technologists, it's all about technology, but somebody in your company, in your startup, is going to be deciding whether we want to invest that money or not. What's predicted is, in the next 20 years, you would have supplementary technologies that will supplement CMOS. Could be a combination. You could have a processor chip with a gallium nitride high-power device, for instance, integrated in a package. I just made it up. I don't know if that's real or not. But industry focuses on making everything smarter, automotive, industrial, medical. It's going to be driven by the users, right? ADAS for automobiles, autonomous vehicles, things like that. Large numbers of differentiated products and technologies produced in differentiated processes, blah, blah, blah. So again, you got to look at the business trade-off. It only makes sense if the amount it takes to design that part can be offset by the volume that you're going to have. If you're going to sell 100 units of something and it costs you $100 million to make it, there's no way that's going to be a viable product, right? So just keep that in mind. Fundamentally, I think the opportunities are very much there. Lots of exciting technical areas and lots of opportunities, whether it's in design, processing, packaging, integration, all of the above. All of those things work. You got to decide where you want to play. All right. You guys want to take a break or just keep going? How many want to take a break? One? I guess we're not taking a break. Maybe we'll finish a little early, huh? Okay, entrepreneurs, close to my heart. I told you earlier, 70% of millennials want to start their own business. 70% of the Z generation. So what is entrepreneurship? Entrepreneurship is where you take an idea and you create a product that creates you wealth. It's not about the idea, it's about creating wealth. So it's all about money. Now, you got to have an idea that's good technically. If it's not feasible technically, you don't make the money. But that's the fundamental difference between what people might think good entrepreneurship is. But you're taking an idea and you're creating wealth out of it. By the way, there are a lot of people that are innovators, especially as designers, process people. We all like to create, right? And that's great. But you got to do more than just create the idea. You got to do more than just create the circuit. You got to solve a customer problem. I think that's the fundamental difference. So why do I care so much about this? I'll tell you the story. As I mentioned, my company, we focused on, in the 2000 timeframe, on serving emerging companies. So the other startup companies that wanted to have, that had ideas and wanted to create a business out of it. We offered them a service, and in 5 years we ended up helping maybe 20 plus companies. Guess how many of those were successful? One. They went public eventually. So 1 out of 20, that's 5%. Yeah, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, these are good people. They got good ideas. Why are they not successful? And I'll walk you through what I summarize as the top 5 reasons why those companies were not successful. And that's what made me write my book. and teach how to do it so that it was right. Now, that book is written in the context of fabless integrated circuits, but yeah, 70% of the principles apply to almost anybody. And so that's what got me into teaching students coming through school and sharing my experiences how to do this right. So fundamentally, most startups are not successful. And why are they not successful is because they're focusing on the technical solution and not the customer. So the right way to do this, so what people do is you get an idea, you get a brand new circuit, you say, oh, this is a great circuit, nobody else has done it, let me create a business out of it. They have no clue who the customer is going to be. All about the customer. If there's no customer, you don't make money. And one of the things I will say is that especially researchers and professors are really bad at this, right? They know enough about the space that they're in. They come up with this paper that they can write, and they think they know what the customer wants. So they'll launch a company without doing due diligence to figure out whether the customer really cares or not. And so that's one of the reasons why a lot of the research professor startups are not successful either. It's because the inventor's perspective, what the customer needs rather than really the customer. So what's the right way to do this? Is instead of doing a, can I build this chip or product, should it be built? So the first thing you got to do is figure out, you get a customer validation, whether this product should be built or not. So I was telling you about the top 5 reasons why companies I worked with failed. So let me just walk you through some of these. If you just really take a quick look, customer, product specifications, blah, blah, blah. 2 out of the 5 are customer related. Why is that? Okay, no customer engagement until it's too late. So why does this happen? Especially true for circuit designers. We come up with a circuit to solve a technical solution. We're the only ones that have the solution. We don't want to tell anybody about it. Now you got to design the chip. You got to implement the chip. You got to spend a lot of money getting it to market. To give you an example, I had a customer that is a friend of mine. He's a CEO of a startup. He had an algorithm to do MPEG-4 processing using a DSP chip. He had a new algorithm for DSP. He implemented that, and they got it through the fab. Customer liked the solution. Customer was going to scale it up to 100,000 units a month or whatever, so he hired my company to come help them scale up the product. Well, the orders never came. What happened was that the customer was expecting them to have the embedded software to go along with this. It's a digital camera customer in Taiwan, and he basically said, unless you give me the software, I'm not going to buy the chip. And so this company went out of business. My friend got fired as a CEO. It's case number 1. So was he doing the right thing? You know, in hindsight, you can say, well, he should have talked to the customer earlier. This was a hardware company that had no software experience, so therefore they couldn't do the software. But if he had anticipated, he could have hired a company in China, India, wherever to do the software and make it part of the solution. But not talking to the customer is not an option, in my book, right? Okay, number 2, not understanding and meeting customer expectations. So that could be an example of this also, right? Is he in that case did not know what the customer really expected. And I could give you all kinds of examples of why that is the case. So really getting customer engagement and no, actually that example might fit better into this one. The no customer engagement was if you close the idea really close to your heart and don't tell the customer. By the time, this was another company, right? So they went to the customer with their solution, and the customer said, oh, great solution, but you know what? I already have an alternative solution in-house. Why? Because if you look at the timelines, while you're designing your chip and implementing it, it might take you a year, year and a half, and this customer is wanting to ship a product. They're not going to wait for you, even if you tell them. They're going to have an alternative. So not telling the customer, again, is not an option. Right? So you got to share. So you can argue that the reason they didn't tell the customer is because they were afraid the customer might copy it. True, that is a risk. You got to have that partnership with the customer. If they're so crucial to your product, you've got to have that relationship with the CEO or some senior level person that's not going to take your idea and do it internally. So that's more a management issue, but you do have to share your idea. And again, in my book and then my classes, what I teach is I'll lay out the customer development cycle and your development cycle. You got to have constant engagements, or else you're going to fail. I'll give you an example. I don't know if you've thought about this, but smartphones, if Apple wants to ship an iPhone for the customer for the Christmas market, right? Christmas is December. You have to have that to the wireless company, the Verizons of the world in the U.S., Sprint or T-Mobile, whoever, by November 15th. If you don't, you're going to miss the market. So you can back up from there and say that if you are Qualcomm shipping a chip that goes into the iPhone, if you don't deliver that chip by, I'll make a number, July 1st, you're not going to make that market window. So there's some very discrete benchmarks that you've got to make, and you have to keep in touch with your customer, because customers got to know that your first lot has got some problem or whatever, when they should expect it, because you know what? Apple's going to have an alternative solution, or HTC or whoever. They're not going to make their revenue based on one single supplier. So you have to understand that whole market scenario in order to be successful. Now, why am I telling you all this? Is if you then get into a product that you're building as a startup, no matter what it is, if it's going in the Christmas market, it's got to have a timeline. And the customer is going to have an alternative solution. They're not going to pin their hopes on this podunk startup that's never shipped a product. Right? If you were a customer, wouldn't you do that? Just expect that. Don't be in your corner thinking, oh, the customer said, oh, they like the product, our product, so they will therefore buy it. You better believe it. They're going to have an alternative to make sure they make their revenue, with or without you. Very simple principle, but as technologists, we don't have that insight. So that's what I'm trying to share with you is things that you got to be cognizant of. So those are two customer-related things. Aggressive product specifications. Again, as engineers, we love technology, we love specs, right? And classic example of this is if you were doing a chip, I'll take that as an example, and the customer was looking for 1.4 gigahertz operation, and your spec said 1.3, and then you do some back of the envelope calculation, say, sure, I can tweak it to 1.4, I'll meet your expectation. You get the order, you start implementing it, guess what? You need 10 extra pins on your package because I can't get the speed performance. I need a new library, new IP block, new whatever. So what happens? As a startup, do you have any credibility? You've never shipped anything. Your credibility is zero, right? You make a commitment to the customer that you're going to deliver a part on October 1st with all the specs that you had committed to, and now to do all these extra things, what is that doing? That's delaying your schedule. So you have zero credibility to start with. You start to implement and you can't deliver. Is that helping your credibility? Absolutely not. You're never going to get another order. So how do you manage this? There's a systematic way, I believe, that you create a roadmap. Don't overcommit the specs. You, of course, got to get the business. If it's something you can do 90% of the spec, if you could do the 1.3 in that example, tell the customer you'll deliver that on October 1st. By November 1st, you'll have the 1.4. Right up front. Deliver that 1.3 on October 1. Customer can say, yeah, these guys mean what they say. I'm going to trust what they're saying. That's how you establish your credibility. So again, these are very simple-minded, but very important considerations if you're going to have your own company. How does this apply if you go work at a big company? Same kinds of things apply, right? Whether it's an external customer or whether it's your boss, if as a designer you're making a commitment and you don't meet your commitment, what's your boss going to think? Yeah, I'm not sure I can trust this guy. So get into that habit of once you make a commitment, make it achievable and deliver. Because then you get the raises, then you get the reputation, and you advance in the company. So very simple principles, but it'll help your career development. Kitchen sink syndrome. This is a term at least used in the US, right? So if you're in your kitchen, you finish eating, you put your plates in your kitchen sink, and you're lazy and you don't want to wash them until they stack up, right? So same kind of idea that, let's say you start implementing your design to the specification that you think you can meet, and you go down a month later, there's a new USB 3.4 spec, right? And your marketing guy says, well, there's no way I'm going to sell a chip with 3.0. You got to do that 3.4. And you got this funding to do this one chip, so what do? You stop your implementation, you put in the new spec, and what does it do? It delays your schedule. And you keep adding these, and you delay your schedule, you're not helping your credibility. That's, again, a major failure point. And then, of course, the management of the supply chain. Remember I showed you all the different foundries and assembly and test and packaging and all that stuff. Those all have to come together. It used to be a lot more difficult. It's a lot easier now, but just remember, it's not perfect. It's usually, do you use the term Murphy's Law here? If something can go wrong, it will. So anticipate that even if you've got all the commitments from all your suppliers, it's the weakest link in your chain that you never anticipated. That's what's going to hold you up. It has happened to me time and time and time again. The example of integrated circuit is going to be packaged in an off-the-shelf standard package, 28 QFN, whatever, I don't remember. It was a standard lead frame that supplier had in stock, all that stuff. And the orders went in, whoops, the supplier didn't deliver their lead frame. Guess what? I couldn't deliver the part. So anticipate, make sure there's backups, all of those things. It's more mundane stuff that is not sexy stuff that we engineers care about, but it's very important in being successful as a supplier. So, by the way, this applies to, like I said, you know, at your job at a industry company, or maybe even in your research. So that's the book. You could look at it if you want to. All right, so what's the model of how to do it right? I'm telling you all the reasons why it won't be successful. What about how to do it so it is successful? So you got to have an idea. Very important. You also have to have a desire to have your own company. What that means is that you want to make money. You want to make revenue, and you make profit. Just having the idea is good for research, but not for business, right? So you got to have both of those things. You got to have an idea, you got to have the passion and the desire to create your own business. You got to want to be your own boss. If you don't want to be your own boss and make money, don't think of doing startups, right? That's a dangerous situation to be in. So assume you got that, then what do you need? You need a problem that you're solving. It's telling me to